I had just settled into my new apartment, a small but cozy one-bedroom in a quiet Chicago suburb. The move had been more stressful than I'd anticipated, as moves often are, but that Friday evening, I felt a sense of calm wash over me as I turned on some music and unpacked the last few boxes. It felt like the start of something better, something that I needed after leaving a turbulent 3-year relationship. The apartment was in a converted older house, split into 4 units. Each neighbor seemed friendly enough. An elderly woman on the ground floor named Mrs. Henderson, and a young couple in the other ground floor unit. Mine and another apartment, which seemed unoccupied, occupied the 2 upstairs levels. The creaky wooden staircase led right to my front door, bathed in the soft golden glow of a solitary bulb in the hall. The first few nights passed uneventfully, the kind most wouldn't even notice in their lives, filled with the regular sounds of distant city traffic and the occasional bark of the neighbor's dog. Each morning I'd head out early for work, leaving before I encountered another soul, and come home to watch TV or read before bed. My evenings were quiet rituals of unwinding in solitude, a welcome change. Still, it wasn't long before I started noticing something odd. Every so often, late at night, I'd hear a rhythmic tapping from the apartment above me. Not loud, but persistent, like someone gently but repeatedly rapping on the walls or floors. As a kid, my brother and I used to tell each other ghost stories about knocking on the walls. Regardless, I forced myself to dismiss the noise as old house quirks. Yet it continued almost nightly, at irregular intervals. I wrote it off as even possibly some small animal trapped between the walls or barely resonating plumbing. However, one evening while reading on my couch, I distinctly heard footsteps. Heavy and deliberate, they carried themselves over the ceiling, back and forth. It sounded unlike anything I'd heard before, not squirrels or other critters. This time, curiosity overcame my hesitation. I went down to check with Mrs. Henderson, thinking perhaps the owners had quietly rented out the other unit and forgotten to inform me. "Upstairs? Dear, no one's there. Hasn't been rented in quite some time," she said as her eyes clouded with a moment of thought. "The last tenant, though, he kept to himself. Anyway, it's best locked up. There shouldn't be anyone there, lad." The way she lingered on that, paired with a shadow of concern that swept across her demeanor, unnerved me. But retaining polite social decorum, I thanked Mrs. Henderson and returned to my apartment. Her explanation satisfied my rational mind only momentarily as that tap-tap started anew that night, as if the noise was jeering at the futility of human comfort. After another week or so, the sounds graduated from mere oddities to disturbances. At work one morning, I considered mentioning it to my coworkers. Our small team often shared random bits of chatter around the break room, but ghost stories didn't make for the best conversation starters with rational adults. I decided to dismiss it once more until it did, till in the office's cold, fluorescent lighting, I noticed the lack of sleep blooming under my eyes reflected on the bathroom mirror. That weekend, I invited my friend Maggie over. We hadn't caught up since my move, and her blissfully loud laughter and energy seemed like exactly what I needed. We spent hours binge-watching trashy reality shows until our chuckles were overtaken by the weight of the pizza and cider. As we started winding down at around 1 a.m., the tapping began once again. "The heck is that?" Maggie halted mid-sentence, her gaze running toward the ceiling. "The upstairs ghost, maybe?" I tried to joke. "Super funny," she shot back with less sarcasm than I'd expect. "No, really, what is that?" I explained the sounds, the footsteps, and the vacant apartment above mine. To my right, a leaf, Maggie looked genuinely intrigued, which somehow made the irrational fractures in my resolve feel less absurd. In the adventurous spirit only a buzz-induced late night could conjure, Maggie suggested we investigate. Reluctantly, and feeling somewhat foolish, I agreed. Wrapping ourselves in sweatshirts to battle the chill, we ventured into the stairwell. I hesitated when I reached the door to the second unit. Several minutes stretched while hand hovered near the doorknob. "This is dumb," I trailed off, but Maggie, always headstrong, grabbed the knob and twisted. The door, locked as expected, only rattled in its frame. "See? No ghost." Still, Maggie stopped mid-convincing, raising her hand for silence. There it was, a shuffling, definite but groggy, as if someone had been rudely awakened from slumber. The practical side of me, It always has been my guide, urged me to head back downstairs and call it a night. However, Maggie wasn't as easily dissuaded from a chase when intrigued. "You ever think maybe it is some squatter?" she mused aloud. The suggestion hadn't crossed my mind before. For all my readiness to dismiss the supernatural, I hadn't truly considered the reality that someone might actually be living there illicitly. And really, how frightened should one be of some vagrant or drifter, though? As silence fell upon us again, Maggie suggested I bring it up with the landlord. It seemed more reasonable each passing hour, but that night churned with the sounds more vivid, more insistent. That was all the encouragement needed to sway opinion. Monday came, and I contacted my landlord, Mr. Hales, detailing the disturbances as plainly as possible. He seemed taken aback by my account, promising to come by later that week to check on it. Satisfied with his assurance, my apprehension dulled, dismissing new noises as echoes of my heightened imagination. When Mr. Hales visited, it was in the company of a wiry man with a buzz cut introduced as Alex. They were all business and wry smiles as they moved purposefully, speaking little beyond pleasantries and quick inspections, promising again that they'd look into the matter. When I inquired about the previous tenant, hesitancy tilted their shared expressions. "Fella was a bit off," Mr. Hales finally explained. "Had a quiet, private demeanor. Left no trouble, though." That vague yet amicable outline of the previous tenant failed to assuage my growing suspicion, yet offered no grounds for further probing. The week that followed brought some quiet, almost unnervingly so, fostering a sense of precarious calm. I told Maggie over our phone call that maybe, all things considered, living there would take some adjustment. Absence of sound created its parallel fears, permitting imaginations to occupy more space. As another weekend loomed, I planned to use the perfect excuse to engage with neighbors during shared parking lot moments, as we'd increasingly intersect there. On Saturday morning, the young couple, Dan and Lacey, were heading to their car. Daylight brought courage, and daylight provided norm. They seemed down to earth and receptive to light banter, so I broached the subject with care. "Oh, sometimes we hear creaks," Lacey acknowledged, "but we guessed old houses are bound to make some noise." The rest of our interaction held that unnerving flicker, a glimmer of something inadequately explained, hiding not malice but disquiet still. Mutual hesitations often swapped during pauses, inching closer to admissions that weren't ready to step forward. Afterwards, I resolved to let things settle into whatever pattern time demanded, both with the benefit of social reassurance and an understanding if ignorance couldn't be escaped completely rationally. One night, several weeks after Mr. Hale's visit, I heard the soft shuffle once more, a disturbed half-sleep crossing reality, and a potent mix of fear and adrenaline suddenly filled my veins. I was able to pinpoint the exact moment the air changed. On my way to grab a glass of water, something goaded me toward the desk. There, resting atop stacked mail piles, was the previously tucked away spare keys to upstairs. I swore to myself I'd kept it elsewhere, a throwback anxiety to the night Maggie and I stood locked outside, but neither of us had misplaced or removed anything regardless. Bewilderment merged with unease. Maybe I should inspect. That singular decision, impulsive and foolish, steered everything from ominous but manageable discomfort into raw reality. Hesitation remained dominant, but choice prevailed, and the key was used once more in breaking locks, not so a second time. Ascending one flight secured only peaks of awareness, rather than understanding, until the apartment door creaked open before me. Inside, shadows stretched untethered in deeper caverns pitch. Broken dim fluorescent bulbs provided flickers amoebic shifting. In the vague glow, corners held unfamiliar furniture, a sparse mattress amidst the clutter, suspicions crystallizing as nothing more nor less remarkable, an adrift interloper. Threading paths past open closets to signs, piles of unwashed laundry, wrinkled papers smudged by forgotten pens, belonging freshly fresh enough to seek recognition from forever encounters. Amidst competing heartbeats, footfalls startled closer, originating back, away from clearance. Breath swept constricting lungs, always an active agent when it emerged near fear, yet unwilling see only tepid clears threatening doom. Stopped sounds that leap fast from places unseen, translating from distant non-existence. Half phalanges gripped instinct, fight foremost now, before abandoned flight. Back beyond threshold embraced into familiar cool hallways. Futile locks too, frail comfort or weapon gone. One retreat, apprehension gardening doubts. Long days cocooned, though these saw no light. Cuts corners wouldn't avail memory. NSRA now most left blind, calling clarion call to unveil past too surely impulsed. Reading past journals hides trite enduring decisions traced effortless while I fancied little. Belated context skirts faded photographs faced and forgotten trait off measures slightly above except reacting still in perspective or posed. It's not a happy ending, nor timely misplacement fraught repetitive. Rent reimbursed reluctantly, wished passing postponement to dim ages additionally. No voices persist still, and truly unknown intimacies that might align with another. It ended as it should, perhaps more abrupt than assumed. Prolonged melody swept quiet tidally, each lingering unrest. Souverainement dismissed in simpler conclusions high above as nightly shudder blends disaffected casts returning. Even if not heard remotely more, any length suspend lingering atmospheres or perfect echoes to new appendices retain assurances, ultimately unexplainable.